After that beautiful poem, I feel as though what I've got down is just so basic, but I jotted down a few thoughts on the meaning of Christmas for me, and when I looked over it a day or so later, I realised how peculiar, because I hadn't mentioned gift giving, and that's very odd, because unlike everybody else, I go to the shopping centres and I run around madly buying presents for family, while Bing Crosby sings "I'm dreaming of a white Christmas" and it's boiling hot, and the whole incongruous bit is part of my Christmas scene. It's a long way from Bethlehem and the wise men who were said to have brought gifts to the baby Jesus, who was born in a manger. And mostly I accepted that as fact until I came along to Unity and found out there was actually no baby born in Bethlehem, or at least not Jesus. And Mark was the first gospel to be written, suggests that Jesus was born in Nazareth. And it wasn't until about 80 Common Era that Matthew mentioned that Jesus had been born in Bethlehem. And despite all these inconsistencies, the Christian tradition has incorporated them and legitimised these traditions, as Robin Mayer, in his amazing book, Saving Jesus from the Church, points out. And I recommend it to you. It's one of the best books I've ever read. My first memory of the gift giving and receiving tradition, it was just before I turned 3, and I was given a trike for Christmas. And I have this memory of trying to pedal it forward, and everybody saying to me, press down, but when I pressed down I went backwards. So Christmas sort of could have scarred me, actually. The next year, just before I turned 4, Horry Weymouth down the road told me, and children, block your ears, there's no such person as Father Christmas. And when Mum was drying me after my bath that night, I said, there's no such person as Father Christmas. And she said, righto, that's fine, I won't have to hide presents then. So, being a fairly logical kid, the next night after my bath I announced, there's no such person as God, because after all, God watched over me and caught me doing wrong things just like Santa did. So that was a very logical conclusion to make. And with that one, I got a smack on my bare bottom. I think the one and only smack Mum ever gave me. So despite the rough beginnings, I think that I'm a bit of a Christmas junkie. I'm also aware that Christmas is a difficult time for those who are lonely, homeless, away from home, and I celebrate the wonderful people who give their time and labour to support others on Christmas Day. And I've got wonderful memories of Christmas at the Alfred Hospital. I really enjoyed working on Christmas Day. The wards were decorated. The most amazing volunteers came in. Literally, choirs of angels walked around the wards singing Christmas carols, and even seriously ill people, you could see that they were uplifted. And there was a remarkable volunteer at the Alfred who volunteered as Santa for 30 or 40 years. And I remember him coming around the wards, and there was a little very, very sick girl that I nursed who virtually lived at the Alfred, and she was French, and I remember her calling out, "Saint Nikolai, Saint Nikolai," and I believe he was the first Santa. But yeah, beautiful memory of what that did for a very, very sick little girl. And volunteers like these are truly practicing the teachings of Jesus, our human teacher and way shower. Once I had my own family, I increasingly became a Christmas junkie fundamentalist. I developed very strict guidelines on how Christmas should operate, and I think this comes from an instinct that we all share, and that's that we humans need feast days. I think that's why we put all this effort into our traditional Christmas celebration. We share this need with people of all humankind, Indigenous cultures and all cultures. Christmas gives us a chance to get together and celebrate life, and what better symbol of life and love could we have than a newborn baby? And we went to Carols by Queerlight last night, and there was a little baby at the other table, and I so much wanted to ask, could I have a turn? So, I've seen some wonderfully delightful Christmas pageants over the years, and staging them gives the little children a lot of fun, while doting parents and grandparents look on proudly. And one of the best Christmas pageants I've seen was when my kids were teaching down at Geelong Grammar, and the junior school put on their pageant, and Mary was a grade 6 girl, and she came in heavily pregnant, patting her tummy, and there was no room in the inn, so she went behind a screen and she delivered the baby. She came out holding the baby, and the baby was real. And the baby was put in his manger, and she continued to smile beatifically down at it, and the baby continued to just kick and wave its little arms and legs. Just amazing. We found out the baby was actually a twin, and I've always wondered how scarred the other one might be for not being chosen as baby Jesus. I enjoy watching the carols by candlelight while we wrap presents, and I enjoy singing them at our family gatherings with using my father's carol books from Allen's, 1 and 6 a copy. And we really need Bill to unitise the words, because some of the words really are fairly amazing. And at the end of this, Jim and I are going to my French family Christmas celebration, and it is so sweet for me that my great nephews from my first marriage have learned to sing the Holy City, which was my father's tradition when he led our family Christmas carols, and I'm sure they'll sing it for me beautifully, but it moves me so much to hear them do that. And there's something poignant about these traditions that speak to us of the beauty of the perfection of the human spirit and our heart's longing for love, peace, joy and goodwill. In essence, God's will for us, represented in our culture as the Christ child. And I know Jim will talk, Bill, I always muddle Bill and Jim, that Bill will talk more about the symbology of the Christ Spirit being born in us. The music last night at the carols was just beautiful, and it's uplifting, and I had then a real understanding of being transported collectively to the transcendent realm. And it might all seem a little bit odd that we sing these words, but the music and the coming together really does take humankind to this other level. And the true spirit of Christmas belongs to all cultures. whether we have this creed or another creed. And as Robin Myers points out, it belongs to everybody, and it's everybody's responsibility to carry on those traditions of love, peace, goodwill to all. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad that I can have Christmas on Christmas Day. Being married to a Swedish man who was always at sea, we'd still have all our decorations up in March, and people come and say, "What are all your Christmas decorations doing here?" "We're waiting for Daddy to come home." And then we'd have our big Christmas in March. And then when he was home, we'd have to have a Swedish Christmas, because their Christmas is all on Christmas Eve, not on Christmas Day. But I insisted on having my Australian Christmas, so we had 2 Christmases every year. The Swedish one, and my son got very upset because all the Swedish kids got all their gifts, and he had to wait till the next day for the Australian Father Christmas. So Christmas is wonderful when we can be here and have Christmas on Christmas Day. So let me tell you now that as we journey through Advent, we discover that the birth of Jesus is considered to be the outpouring of God's love to humankind. In Jesus we see fulfilled the perfect embodiment of the God presence right here on earth. In Jesus we see that his recognition of his own divinity so filled his consciousness that he became the Christ, the full embodiment of God's idea of the perfect human being. Jesus also recognised that the same light which shone in him also shone in every human being. Though recognised to a lesser degree, or sometimes people just don't recognise this at all, it takes us truth seekers a long while of learning and growing before we fully understand that we have our own divinity indwelling. At Christmas we celebrate the birth of Jesus as the pattern of perfection that we all aspire to become. We also celebrate the birth and the rebirth of our own indwelling Christ Spirit as our awareness increases of our own inherited Christ nature. We all have it. Nobody's left out. We each have the latent destiny to eventually develop into what St. Paul described as unto the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. So as we grow in spirit, we each have the possibility to become Christed. Some truth students find it difficult to believe that they could ever reach such a high level of our own spirituality. However, the truth is that in the long journey of the soul through the grand adventure of eternal life, the soul is destined to eventually develop into the fullness of Christ and so become one with its Creator God. It's all our destiny. So our destiny must be to become Christed. What a wonderful realisation that is. What a wonderful Christmas we can have when we each fully celebrate the truth of our very own being. For too long we have believed that Jesus was the only begotten Son of God, as written in the Bible. Scholars now tell us that this was a mistranslation. It should have been that Jesus was the Son, begotten of the only God. This would have given us the recognition that we are all the offspring of God. We are all the Son. We are all the beneficiaries of God's loving givingness. All that the Father hath is ours. It took Jesus to be born to tell an ailing humanity of the wonderful truth of the birth of God in the human soul, the incarnation of God's Spirit in humankind. Jesus told us the laws of universal truth, which apply to us all, regardless of our stated religion or cultural beliefs, or even our unbelief. Jesus told us the truth of his own divine being, and he told us that this truth was the truth of every individual. And in Unity and all New Thought organisation, we are taught that Immaculate Conception is the realisation that man's source is in the perfect. Though we were all taught that the Immaculate Conception meant that the Virgin Mary was conceived free from the stain of original sin, because she was to be the Mother of God. But we here in Unity know the truth. We know that we are all of us born of pure, immaculate spirit, and we will celebrate the birth of Christ and our own Immaculate Conception on Christmas Day. So let us take this to heart and realise the divinity of our own being and really celebrate it this Christmas, for we are divine beings. Let us give thanks for that. Thank you.
Sylvia said it all. You can go home now. Okay. Christmas time, the meaning of Christmas for me, my goodness. We've had some wonderful Christmases. But it's interesting how you also remember the most traumatic Christmases. Yes, that's a nervous laugh. I think one of the most scary ones was when my first Christmas on the radio station, I think I was 17, at 7BU in Burnie. I had to drive my car in. I had a little mini miner, a green mini miner, and I'd drive along the Bass Highway from Penguin, there was a town called Penguin, through to Burnie, where the station was. And as I'm driving up the hill, a little bird flew into the car, into the front. Oh, shocking feeling. So I get to the station and I look at the playlist and had all the traditional songs. And I had another one, because I was actually the record librarian. And I thought, I'll put this one in. And it was a song we all know, Silent Night. And I thought, oh, this will be nice. I did something like stupid. I didn't preview it. It happened to be Spike Milligan singing the song. And I sat there in horror. Silent Night, the dog barks. And 2 cats. A truck. Jumbo jets. And by the end of it, it was just terrible. Anyway, I thought, cool. I don't think there was anyone listening, so I carried on. 10 minutes later, I get this irate phone call. I've had my wife and family round the radio listening for some carols. You have ruined our morning. I'm going to ring the manager and let him know. Well, at 17, I think, oh, I'm doomed. My career is over. And at that point, I couldn't care less. Anyway, the manager of the station called me in on the Monday after, and his name was Mr. Lord. I've got to say, my first headmaster was Mr. Solomon. And the general manager was Mr. Nunn. It's really too much, but it's true. And he said, did I hear you play Spike Milligan? I said, yes. He said, we've had a couple of complaints. He said, just don't do it again. And later on, when you get to know him, he loved the Goons. He loved them. And he told me when we met at a reunion about 25 years later that he knew that song and all is well. So I felt as if I'd atoned. So there's one traumatic Christmas. But when we talk of Christmas traditions, I looked up the actual meaning. A custom so long continued that it almost has the force of law. And don't some of these customs? Why is it when we were young, we sat down in the middle of summer and had a roast dinner? You know, all those things. And I asked a few people, what their traditions were over the last couple of days, what they remember. And of course someone said, oh, Christmas trees, the cricket, listening to the cricket, going for a swim, and no religion was mentioned at all. So it wasn't associated with a lot of people that I was growing up with that it was really a very serious time once we knew what it was all about. So we know that Christmas means different things to different people. Whereas mainstream churches celebrate the birth of Jesus, we celebrate the birth of the conscious awareness of the Christ in us. Now, that's not new. And those of you who are into interfaith studies will know that 500 years before the so-called birth of Jesus, Gautama Buddha was preaching in India. And around about the same time, Confucius and Lao Tzu were doing the same thing in China, and go back eons and we've got all the Hindu process happening too, and even further. So universal spiritual law is nothing new. It's not a secret. It was there yesterday, today, and it'll be there tomorrow. So it's great to know we have the conscious awareness of that pearl of great price in us. And as Reverend Sylvia talked last week, I think it was, divinity in growing. Now, when we can see through the rituals of Christmas, I'm going to talk more about symbolism next week, we can see the similarities of all religions, creeds and cultures. And all pathways lead to the same destination. Now, we may not pray the Gandhis, do Om, or meditate like that. We may not chant, we may not go to a Jewish temple, or go to midnight mass with the Vatican. But if we did, we would understand it because we know the symbolism of it. The unity teachings have been such an illumination to a lot of people in that metaphysical Bible dictionary. But many people who have been in mainstream churches, who were brought up in Sunday school, like I was, find out the actual meaning of some of these words. It's profound, it really is. So if we did do any of those different cultures, rituals, we would do them and really get involved with them because we understand what they mean. So symbols and rituals help create a sense of reverence in us, reverence for our Creator. Now, with the interfaith tradition, they all talk about love in their own way. We know that love is letting go of fear. Leslie, that was a wonderful series of classes you presented, but there's more to come. And talking about love, Jeanette held the dogs up today. If it had been a cat, I would have bought all the raffle tickets. I love cats, but I don't have one at the moment because I'm not in a stable position to have one. But on my property, there are a couple of cats that sort of roam around. And one of them there, his name was Winston. Winston was a big black cat. And you'd hear them talking about at the pub about this black panther in the district. This cat was big, but it wasn't a panther. But there's a couple of old boys that used to come out of the pub and say, "Where's that panther tonight? He's here." But it was only Winston. And he lived in the property that I've now got. He's moved on with the previous owners. But so what we wish for, we have to be very careful. So this cat decided to come onto my property, a stray cat. What a mixed bag of colours. Not a big cat, but it just one step away from me. And I said to this cat, "I love you, pussycat, come here. But no, it's rejecting me, it's rejecting my love." So I'm going to work on my love nature and see if I can get that cat. There's a way. Now, in the spirit of the Advent candle, let's see what other religious groups have to say about love. There should be some slides now, and the first one is the Baha'is. And they say, love is the secret of God's holy manifestation, of the all-merciful, the fountain of spiritual outpouring. Love is heaven's kindly light, the Holy Spirit eternal breath that vivifies the human soul. So, next one. Buddhism. Advesta and Maitri are benevolent love. This love is unconditional and requires considerable self-acceptance. This refers to detachment and unselfish interest in others' welfare. Christianity. Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets, from Matthew 7, verse 12, King James Version. Confucianism. Do not do to others what you do not want them to do to you. In Hinduism, this is the sum of duty. Do not do to others what cause pain if done to you. Islamic. None of you truly believes until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. Jainism. A man should wander about treating all creatures as he himself would be treated. Judaism. What is hateful to you, do not to your fellow man. This is the law, all the rest is commentary. Native American. Do not wrong or hate your neighbour, for it is not he. You are wrong, but you're not he who you wrong, but yourself. And New Thought. What we do unto others will be done also to us, the law of cause and effect. Sikhism. No one is my enemy, none a stranger, and everyone is my friend. And Taoism. Regard your neighbour's gain as your own gain, and your neighbour's loss as your own loss. So, as we can see, that thread runs through all religions. Now, it's a joy, which is our next week's candle, for those who are brought up in the Christian tradition or traditional church to know that we're all on the right track. It's all leading in the same direction. We read the Bible stories metaphysically to help. We understand the symbology, all from Adam to Jesus, Adam, man of the dust, to Jesus, man of Christ. Now, I still love old churches. I really do actually live in one, which is really crazy. There's no holiday for me. Go from one to the other. An old Methodist church in 1913. But I love the stained glass windows, the old organs, the music, the old hymns. But I'm over the dogma. And I can still have that memory, knowing what it means. So to sum up, in the joy of giving and receiving, we know that what a tremendous gift it is. And it awaits anyone who will understand the full implications of their own indwelling divinity. And the powerful realisation that Christmas is about the conscious realisation of the birth of Christ in us. Thank you.